Welcome to the Lady Landlords podcast, where we empower women to gain financial independence through real estate investing. I'm your host, Becky Nova, founder of Lady Landlords. If you're ready to buy, manage, and grow your real estate portfolio, then let's get started.
Here is the secret reason that I scaled my real estate rental portfolio. Welcome back to today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. My name is Becky Nova, and I am the founder of Lady Landlords. One thing that I don't even think my husband knew was my intention with scaling our rental portfolio over these last 8 years was to ensure that we could have a maternity and a paternity leave in the way that we wanted to make it work. Now, today, the strategy that I'm going to walk you through doesn't have to be for maternity leave. It could be if you are looking for an exit strategy for your job, if you are looking to grow your vacation fund, whatever it is that you want, extra retirement. But it's all the same strategy here. But this to me was very important from a maternity perspective. I used to work back in cancer research. I worked in the medical field, that means. I worked for hospitals for years. And I always saw my coworkers just be so upset when it came to their maternity leave. What did HR actually give? Well, now they had to go on short-term disability. What did that mean? What percentage did they get of their income? What time did they actually get off? They had to use their vacation time. So they couldn't go away at any other point, or they had all these extra doctor's appointments and visits. But yet they couldn't take that time off because then that took away from the time that they would be spending with their newborn. And it just always made me really sad. And I don't know, you can ask my own mother this, but following rules and instructions from other people was never really my thing. So to me, it was always, how do we get to be able to create this life of what we actually want? So like I said, today's episode has nothing to do with maternity. It's just a concept I'm going to talk about because it was something that meant a lot to me. It was my motivation. But if you are looking to leave your job, travel more, build your retirement, have just extra spending money for something that maybe you want to be able to do, your friends, your kids, whoever it is, let's talk about how we can intentionally scale our portfolio to fund whatever it is that we actually want in life, so we don't have to be living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck or rely on a job that at the end of the day really doesn't necessarily care about us. Okay. So like I said, right now, as I'm recording this episode, I am due in about a week. So maternity has just been on my mind a little bit more here. Okay. If you've been listening to our episodes for a while, I did actually retire from cancer research, from my full-time 9-to-5 career about a year and a half ago now. So I will cover just really how those numbers worked out and why that was so important here. But like I said, right now, pretty much everything I'm doing somehow relates back to maternity. So you'll just hear me kind of talk about some of those things in this terms. But what I feel like really needs to get important is the first place you should be starting is how to even calculate what that number is, okay? So think about whatever is important to you. If it's leaving your day job, it might not actually just be what your salary is. Maybe you say, I have a great benefits package. I get a great pension. I get medical benefits that are really important to me. Whatever those things are, you need to think about what that number is. It also might be, you know what? I could live off of a lot less, and I would prefer that, and I'm okay with that. So really being able to make sure you understand your own numbers within your own life are just as important as it is understanding your numbers within your business. What I mean by that is let's take out the whole, how much is my mortgage? What am I paying on a rental property? What's my cash flow coming in? What's my ROI on this investment? Let's remove that. Let's think about what your monthly expenses are. What are you spending on groceries? How much is your car cost? What is your insurance? Once again, think about medical insurance, not just car insurance. How much money do you need to have fun, enjoy the things that you want? For me, a gym is non-negotiable. I was paying about $250 a month at my last gym, and I loved it. And I went all the time, and that was a priority to me, and that was something that I was not willing to give up. Now that I moved to a new home, cost got slashed in by 2/3. Fantastic. But it was something also that I needed to make sure that I was calculating and factoring that into what my budget was. So when I was thinking about what my freedom number was, I did that. Right now, I have to now budget a lot more for some baby related expenses, right? And also I need to understand what that's going to look like. One of the most important things for me, many of you might know, I live in the Dominican Republic for about half the year. That was something I started years ago. I have a home down there, and I go between the two countries, and I self-manage all 17 rental properties from whichever country I happen to be in, as I also own in both countries. That's something that I don't plan on changing now starting a family. So to me, it's also, what are those baby things that I'm going to need, maybe two of, because I'm going to need to buy something in the Dominican Republic, just like I own something here in the United States. So I need to understand what my numbers are. So for example, if you're saying, well, I'm going to need $5,000 a month, well, we need to think about what that's going to look like. We need to think about and build towards that number. That number might be $5,000 a month. It might be $10,000 a month. For some people, it might be $20,000 a month. Also, it has nothing to do with actually needing to quit your job. That might be something that you're just kind of saying, great, I want to be able to go part-time. I want to be able to retire my husband. I want to be able to travel more. And maybe you just need a little bit of extra money with that, and it doesn't have to be such a large number. For me, with this maternity leave concept, I really wanted to make sure that I could take off that time and that I was going to be able to, not just myself, but also my husband, that we weren't going to need that money, that we didn't have to work, that we didn't have any of that. So we needed to make sure that we were saying, hey, what do my reserves look like? What am I going to do with any other vacancies? What am I going to do with any other maintenance that is going to come up? What other lump sum bills am I going to have? Because we really are going to take off probably about 6-7 months before we consider doing anything else. We're already living off of our rental income, but I don't also plan on acquiring any other property until I kind of get settled a little bit more into motherhood here. So to me, it's not just the covering bills, but where's that peace of mind? Where is a place where I don't have to stress if something does happen? What are my reserves if I do need to evict a tenant, if somebody stops paying, if I have some type of emergency? Many of our listeners here probably remember over the summer when I had a $10,000 chimney that I had to install, and I had 48 hours to do that. Well, I'm happy I had my reserves to do that. So calculating what is that freedom number, what number coming in is going to make you feel comfortable is just the very first place to be able to start. And that second place is now, how do we build the cash flow, and how do we do that with the right properties? That here is the biggest caveat to it. What I mean by that is, let's say, for example, we're targeting that $5,000, right? Well, if you have just one single family property that is cash flowing $300 a month, right? Well, in order to get to that $5K month, you're going to need 17 of those. 17 properties. I have 17 rentals. That's quite a bit to start managing, right? But if you start thinking about that in terms of how can I do that with some duplexes, how can I kind of put those in, and how can I do that where maybe my cash flow is $500, $600, $700 a month? Well, you're going to need a lot less properties. I've said this multiple times before. The amount of rentals or the amount of doors that we talk about as investors honestly doesn't matter. I will never compete to say that I have the most amount of doors. That is not something I want. Honestly, I meet people all the time that are like, oh, I have 50, 100, 500 doors. And my first thought is, that sounds miserable. That sounds like a full-time job. That is the opposite of personally what I was looking for. What I really wanted was to figure out how I can get the least amount of properties for the most amount of money. That to me is always focusing on that quality of cash flow, the quality of properties. I still, 8 years into this industry, get people all the time that are like, oh, I don't understand why you're investing in New York. There's so many cheaper places. Okay, but a cheaper rental, a cheaper property does not mean that there's better cash flow. There are people that I know that have so many more doors than I do, but they don't make anywhere near the amount of money that I make in cash flow. In New York, I can command higher rents. I can get a different price point And that makes my deal analysis much better. If I could do that in another state, maybe I would do it. I don't know. I can find deals in New York. I'm happy with the cash flow. Everything that I own cash flows at least $500 a door per month in profit. That's fantastic for me. I got to be honest. I looked into other states years ago when I was scaling my properties, and I remember that they would say like, oh, in this state or in this city, in this area, all the experts were saying, oh, you can make, $50 a door, $100 a door. And I never talked to my husband, and it was my husband that was just, and he's the less risk taker. He is the one that likes stability. And I remember him just being like, $100 a month? Like, what are we going to do with $100 a month? $100 a month in New York City doesn't even like pay for dinner. That just wasn't worth it for him to get out of bed to buy that property. It just wasn't. We needed a higher cash flow. So for us, it made sense to stay in New York. That's not everybody. But for us, that's what it was worth. So really understanding what that quality is, and really, once again, trying to keep our headaches, the amount of tenants we had, the amount of properties we had down, so we could focus on increasing our time, really gave us that better cash flow number. So that's always important. Most investors do not need 50, 100, 200 different doors. You really need a handful of doors, and that could be enough to replace your entire income, or like me, create a maternity leave of your dreams. That third step, now that we figured out how many properties we're going to need and what type of cash flow and what type of properties we're going to need to be able to do that, you really need to be able to create that leave fund strategy, okay? Not everything just needs to come directly from cash flow. What I think is amazing about real estate is there are so many different things that you can do within real estate investing. It does not always have to be specifically from a cash flow. One, yes, totally fine. Use your cash flow. You can put that profit right into a separate account, and that could be your living expenses. My husband and I do this with our rental properties where we're able to put money that will go directly into reserve funds. So if anything comes up for our properties, we already have that there. And then that's also how we pay ourselves. We are very fortunate in the sense that we're in a place with our portfolio where we get to live off of our rentals. So we need that money just to cover our basic bills, just to cover what those actual life expenses are for us. So we watch that, and we do have regular financial meetings together to go over what those numbers look like. Also, another option for that is if you were in a place where you wanted to leave like myself for maternity leave, or you were saying you wanted to take a sabbatical or just wanted to switch careers, maybe you have to go back to school and take some time off, and maybe you need to go back and pay for education or something like that. Well, think about getting that lump sum together. Maybe this is a place where you're doing a cash out refinance on a property you already own. Maybe you are doing a line of credit, a HELOC, a line of credit on an investment property, taking out from your primary. So in that way you have that lump sum. Make sure if you're doing that, it'd be great if you actually don't have to pay interest unless you use it. A lot of lines of credit will give you that option. So it could be a little bit of that emergency space of, hey, if I want to use this money and I need to, I have access to it, I have it available. But if I don't, well, then at least you're not paying interest on it. That can help you get through some of those transition periods. Another option you could do here is then to also partner up on a deal. Maybe this is something where if you're able to bring the money into it, then the other person is really running it. That allows you to either take that leave, take that sabbatical, whatever it looks like, but you're still getting payments. This is also the beauty of doing private lending. This is something I'll do in between deals as well to be able to make money and to bring an interest on the money that I have on hand, but I don't have to buy another rental property, but I get regularly scheduled payments coming in, and I don't have to deal with tenants. I don't have to deal with maintenance. I don't have to deal with anything with the property, but I'm letting that money that I've built through real estate continue to pay me in multiple ways. So by having cash flow coming in, having a line of credit available that I can tap into in case of emergency, if I can have money coming in that I'm making interest off of by lending it to other investors, all of those different options will make sure that I'm continuously being funded. One of the things that I think is so cool is I often get paid multiple times throughout a week from different income streams, all within real estate. And it's something that I can really look at as a full investment plan, and it doesn't have to just be tenant lives in property, therefore I make cash flow. You can start to diversify in some of these different options. You also might want to just do a flip and say, hey, in this one property, I'm going to buy this building, fix it up before I go on sabbatical, before I have this kid, whatever it may be. And then say, you know what, that lump sum that I'm going to make on that, great. That $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 is what's going to pay for my time. That's going to pay for that trip. That's going to pay for me to retire before I'm able to find part-time work in a new field that's going to bring me more happiness. Whatever it looks like, there are options within that. And I hope those 3 steps will walk you through how to set that up and understanding your number to make it a reality. So I want you to share with me, where are you when it comes to these steps? Let me know down in the comments here. Where are you with coming to scale your portfolio? Are you in a place where you know your freedom number? Have you calculated that out? If so, share it. I want to see what those numbers look like because everybody's is different and everybody's is exactly the right number for them. There is no one size fits all here. 2, if you're a person that is saying, great, I'm in a spot where that cash flow, I really understand how many properties I need, what type of properties that I need to be able to purchase, let me know that down in the show notes because I think that is so crucial to really understand you don't need a ton of rentals to win in this real life game of Monopoly. And 3, make sure that you're creating that fund strategy. What are those different ways that you can diversify with the knowledge and the monies that you already have on hand that continue to grow your portfolio? The beauty of being in real estate investing is that we don't have to wait for permission. That to me was the best thing. I found an email when we were moving from when I had sent and requested off time for a vacation from my boss. I had the time, I had the amount of hours, I had the PTO ready to go, but the boss I had at the time, I was having a lot of problems with, and for whatever reason, she just chose to decline like 2 days of my PTO request, really just completely thwarting my plans for a vacation that I had planned. And it was actually something that was supposed to happen during 2020 that then got delayed. So it was a trip that like I waited years for. And just because somebody else was having a bad day, they weren't letting me use the benefits I was entitled to. And I had to ask for permission to use my very own benefits. That made no sense for me. Real estate investing changed that. It allowed me to build a life that I wanted. It's allowing me now to build my own maternity leave. This allows my husband to not have to work and have his own paternity leave and have us be there for all those amazing milestones that I'm sorry, but a lot of other people in a position where they have to miss. And luckily we won't have to do that. And we could determine what that looks like. If we want to work, if we want to go back to school, if we want to travel, we're going to take our baby down to the Dominican Republic. And I am very, very excited for that because that was what I planned and that's what I've been building for the past 8 years. So I hope some of these tips will help you go after the dreams and the goals that you have in your life. If you need help coming up with what that strategy looks like, we do have the Lady Landlords Inner Circle, which is a smaller community of women that really are focused on creating financial freedom in their own terms. So if that is something that interests you and you would like to have some assistance from some experts that have built out strategy to be able to do this and have put it into play, feel free to either just comment below that you'd like more information on the Inner Circle or feel free to shoot me an email at becky@lady-landlords.com. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Please do make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, visit lady-landlords.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.